Right, so is Donald Trump about to go to war, or is he going to make Vladimir Putin a peace mediator between Israel and Iran, with all the hypocrisy that would add to the fire where Ukraine is concerned? And would Israel even respond to such a proposal? Could they afford not to, given Trump would be making the demand? Is it a realistic prospect, or is it just Trump flipping from one extreme to the next like a bipolar orange toddler on a power trip? Will the rest of the West, in their desire to remain close to Trump, back Putin, the peace negotiator, or continue to condemn him still for war in Ukraine? Because surely they can't do both. With more military vessels and other assets heading for the Middle East from the US, it could be war. Certainly Trump's demand that 17 million people, the population of the Greater Tehran area, evacuate. But where do so many people go? Trump stood on a platform of no more new wars. His base are holding him to that. Iranian allies are threatening US interests in the Middle East if the US joins Israel in fighting Iran, because it will only be for Israel's interests. This is a test of how bought and paid for Donald Trump is by what ends up coming to pass, therefore. Right, so the potential for a full-scale US entry into war with Iran under the alleged leadership of the Jaffa Orange joke that passes for their president, Donald Trump, despite all his claims of being a no-more wars president, may have proven to be a lot of hot air and a wake-up call to his supporters that he might have been lying to get what he wanted. Something that they really ought to have cottoned on to after his first presidency, in all honesty, but some people on the right wing truly are very hard of learning. As evidence continues to mount that Trump very much greenlit Israel's unprovoked attack on Iran despite his initial public denials, he has since confirmed it himself after all, the conversation has turned not just towards the frightening immediacy of war, but the deeper contradictions and hypocrisy such involvement exposes about American foreign policy. Trump's erratic leadership and the volatility of Middle East geopolitics when the US sticks its very much unwanted military nose in. Trump's apparent decision to support, if not outright authorize, the Israeli strike on Iran represents a pretty big shift from his electioneering anti-war rhetoric, doesn't it? His MAGA base, long supportive of his self-styled image as a non-interventionist, is now being forced to reckon with the real possibility that Trump may drag the US into yet another war, and not for any American interest whatsoever, save to sate the bloodlust of those involved in AIPAC and the Miriam Adelsons of this world, but for Israel's military ambitions only. Did the pro-Israel Trump backers really have him in their pocket or no? Well, time will certainly tell, won't it? It was only a couple of days ago, of course, that Trump publicly denied that the US had any role in Israel's attack on Iran, stating unequivocally that the US had nothing to do with it. However, this narrative crumbled almost immediately, with multiple sources having since reported that Trump not only knew about the attack, but greenlit it, believing that by deepening US-Israeli coordination, he could exercise leverage on Iran over those nuclear negotiations. That's because he's an idiot. Iran have simply walked away from the table, and now it seems more war could be Trump's interpretation of how to get them back. Instead, they are now considering a bill to leave the nuclear non-proliferation agreement instead. Trump quite simply would have achieved more by staying at home and just shutting up, but he still doesn't ever seem to get that. Now it's less talk about nukes and more about peace and ending this conflict between Israel and Iran that he evidently assented to begin with. So this duplicity undermines Trump's repeated claim to be a peace-orientated leader and throws into question his intentions and reliability. Iran has directly accused the United States of complicity in Israel's aggression and says it has solid evidence to prove this involvement. This accusation carries weight not least because Trump has basically said as much himself now, but also diplomatically and strategically, as it gives Iran every justification to expand its retaliation beyond Israeli targets and now towards US military assets in the region. Though having said that, they do not wish to escalate matters into wider conflict. They've said as much themselves too, and have thus far not acted in that direction. In addition to Trump's erratic positioning when it comes to Iran right now, though, possibly with the impending possibility of military action, or not, we still don't know. It's one way or the other from one minute to the next, isn't it? The Kataib Hezbollah group in Iraq has explicitly warned that if the US joins Israel in attacks on Iran, it will consider US bases in Iraq legitimate targets. In recent years, this group, along with other Iraqi militias, have shown they are capable of launching significant coordinated attacks on American interests within the country, the US presence deeply unwanted in Iraq as it already is. Meanwhile, US military movements paint a picture of preparation for war as well, not restraint. According to the marine traffic website, the USS Nimitz has left the South China Sea and is now moving west towards West Asia in what is being seen as an unmistakable sign of increasing readiness to support Israel or engage Iran militarily. Simultaneously, the Wall Street Journal have reported that additional US naval vessels equipped with ballistic missile defense systems are being deployed to the eastern Mediterranean as well. Already, the USS Thomas Hudner, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, has joined 2 others in that region. What makes Trump's behaviour even more bewildering is his simultaneous talk of brokering peace between Israel and Iran whilst all of this is going on. Just the other day he was saying peace between Israel and Iran was very close and that it could happen very soon. Yet practically in the same breath he's also pivoted to demand the immediate evacuation of Tehran in a truly bizarre and historically stupid post on Truth Social, reading, "Iran should have signed the deal. I told them to sign. What a shame and a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran." You can say it as much as you like. Iran haven't got a nuclear weapon, but thanks to you, if they leave the NPT now, they may now decide they actually do need one. This is a threat to sovereignty bar none. Tehran is a city whose metropolitan area is home to nearly 17 million people. The absurdity of such a demand is self-evident. Evacuating a city the size of Tehran would be logistically impossible, diplomatically inflammatory, and psychologically it's terrorizing. Watching and listening to Trump is like getting whiplash. One moment peace, the next war, then back to peace again. Does Trump have a coherent strategy, or is he simply reacting to political opportunities as they arise, regardless of the consequences? His words and actions suggest not a grand plan, but a chaotic improvisation by a president with an IQ hovering somewhere around the level of a chimp with learning difficulties. And in the volatile Middle East, improvisation is a recipe for catastrophe. Further complicating this already stupefying situation is Trump's suggestion that Vladimir Putin, of all people, might mediate peace between Israel and Iran. Now, on paper, actually, this might seem pragmatic. Russia enjoys relatively strong relations with Iran, and goodness knows we know he gets on with Trump, and therefore could plausibly act as a neutral party. However, the optics of the situation are catastrophic for Western credibility. At a time when the US and its allies are ostensibly supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression, backing Putin as a peace broker in the Middle East is absolutely schizophrenic. It would amount to the West legitimizing Putin's international role, even as they condemn him for waging war in Europe. This is a guy with an ICC arrest warrant out against him, after all, so the implications and the optics are just nuts. They can erode Western support for Ukraine, depending on how various European leaders act, likely split, which would fracture alliances and expose the shameless hypocrisy in Western foreign policy. Moreover, it raises the question, is Trump and his closeness to Putin effectively ceding control of the Middle East diplomacy to Moscow now? That'll go down well in the US, won't it? But then on top of all of this, and affecting Trump personally, depending on how he reacts, is the disillusionment spreading through Trump's own base. The MAGA movement was in part founded on opposition to America's endless wars. Trump campaigned in 2016 as the anti-war candidate. He stuck with that mantra, promising to bring troops home from Afghanistan, and he very much did. Now, with the real possibility of war with Iran, his supporters are experiencing cognitive dissonance. High-profile MAGA voices, generally insane as they are anyway, the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson, have gone ape over the idea of a new Middle Eastern conflict. Senator Tim Kaine has even introduced legislation to try and prevent Trump from unilaterally launching military strikes against Iran without congressional approval. And all of this reflects a growing unease in Washington that Trump's impulsiveness could lead to a wider war, one that could consume the region and damage US interests irreparably. And the optics need to be fixed on the US for instigating this if Trump goes there, because Iran have publicly played down escalation. Not that that will trouble mainstream media if it comes to it, though. And let's not forget Trump's current cabinet in all of this. Unlike the hawkish figures who populated his previous administration, the likes of John Bolton or Mike Pompeo, his present inner circle reportedly leans more towards caution. So any talk of war is likely to see increased internal friction, especially where there is probably no consensus on whether military escalation is a sound course of action here. Trump has made no secret of his desire to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He has repeatedly cited his role in the Abraham Accords as evidence of his peacemaking credentials. Yet if current events are any indication, he's closer to starting World War III right now than earning a peace medal. which is a point picked up on by Grey Zone journalist Max Blumenthal in a tweet he's put out, citing further US military assets heading towards West Asia. A gigantic US Air Force deployment is currently underway with over 20 aerial refueling tankers moving across the ocean, along with many more military assets as Netanyahu pushes Trump to join Israel's war in Iran. I am certain that Trump does not want the US directly engaged in the war, that he fantasizes about winning a Nobel Prize by ending it, and that in any case he is too mentally lazy to manage such a conflict. It is also clear that his base has no desire to fight any neocon war of choice for Israel. America First influencers like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene are now escalating their opposition because they know that it will sabotage what's left of Trump's domestic agenda. But there may be little they can do. The fact is that Trump is bought and bossed by the Zionist billionaire class, and after 2 assassination attempts he's reluctant to defy a mob boss like Miriam Adelson or the malevolent forces she represents. Indeed, Trump trembles before the Israeli assets in his camp. He's like a deer in the headlights of a Merkava tank, and he is not only weak, but delusional enough to believe he can change the subject to immigration or some other culture war fixation after acceding to Netanyahu's maniacal demands. Which means that in the next 48 hours, Trump could greenlight a psychotic regime change war that no country in the world other than Israel wants, which will multiply the human misery of the region 100-fold, tank the global economy, place a target on American backs, and ensure him a place amongst history's greatest losers. So the contradictions here are staggering. A man who wants the world to see him as a peace visionary is actively escalating tensions with Iran while greenlighting attacks and calling for the evacuation of one of the world's largest cities, moving significant military assets towards the Middle East, and functionally the financial backing of those Blumenthal pointed to there are the ones that will win out. It is the wake-up call to the MAGA brigade that Trump made a deal. It just wasn't with you. The Trump-Israel-Iran triangle presents a perfect storm of unpredictability, duplicity, and danger, frankly, for the whole world. For American citizens, the need to think critically and demand accountability from leadership has never been more urgent. Questions must be asked of all of their representatives at all levels about why Trump is escalating tensions on behalf of a foreign country. What does the US gain from joining Israel in attacking Iran? How does partnering with Vladimir Putin for Middle East diplomacy align with professed values and support for Ukraine? And can a president unilaterally drag the US into war without congressional oversight? These are essential inquiries for a functioning democracy right now, and for a citizenry that refuses to be led into an unnecessary war through a mixture of lies, ego, and ideological inconsistency. Surely the people of the United States have had enough of their money being spent on endless ruddy wars. Either the US reasserts the constitutional principle that war powers belong to Congress, not individual presidents, or it risks becoming the tool of one man's erratic foreign policy adventurism. Either the country doubles down on peace and diplomacy, even if that means challenging Israeli aggression and holding allies to account, or it walks blindly into a war that will cost countless lives and destabilise an already fractured region. The Trump administration's mixed messages on Iran reflects more than just political confusion. They expose the raw nerve of American foreign policy contradictions. If the US truly stands for peace, it must act like it. And that begins by saying no to war with Iran, no to hypocrisy, and yes to informed, principled leadership. But sadly, you're struck with Trump for a while yet at least. Sadly. Of course, if Trump goes for war, he won't be alone in that. Here's a picture that will be memed like mad, I'm sure, because it speaks volumes about where the UK government will be positioned where it comes to Donald Trump. Keir Starmer having made much the same decisions and in much the same way dodging parliamentary scrutiny to move more military assets to the Middle East as well, potentially to support Israel. Get all the details of that story as your suggested next watch right here. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, sort of spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.